Thank you very much, Deb, for introduction, as usual. And for those who don't know me, my name is Denlin Wen. I work for the Ministry of Agriculture, provincial government. My job is to support organic production in this province. Today, we're talking about a very familiar subject, termination of cover crops. There are much of the, I guess, much of the information I provided here is a review. So you should have been, growing cover crops to terminate them many, many times. But I want to put it in a systematic way and review some of those concepts. Termination is an integral part of planning a successful cover crop. I to change this a little bit, change my setting a little bit. Yeah, okay. Yeah, growing cover crop is very important for your organic production. It should be within your crop rotation. You want to maximize the benefits of the cover crops and create conditions for successful following cash crops. When thinking about termination of your cover crops, it is important to think about termination of your termination time and right methods to achieve your design goals. Change this. Okay, there we go. First, let's review the primary purposes why we grow cover crops. Cover crops, based on the definition, cover the soil surface to prevent soil erosion. That was the original purposes. And in organic cropping system, it also increases soil nitrogen supply for the following crops. That's specific for organic. For conventional side, guys, they don't really use it for nitrogen because they access the chemical fertilizers. And the other objectives, including improve soil health by increased soil organic matter content, increase and maintain soil structure and water holding capacity, because organic materials would be able to binding the soil particles together, and also enhance soil microbial population diversity and suppress weeds during that season. So those are the primary objectives. Because the type of a cover crop really affects termination methods you use, so I would also like to, review the types of cover crops. It was pretty straightforward. Some people grow annual legume crops like pea or lentils. The others would grow perennial legume crops like alfalfa or clover. And they are annual legume plus cereal crops. Many people do that, like pea and oats, or faba bean and wheat. And in recent years, studies show that multi-species mixed cover crop bring the maximum benefits, including benefits of increased biomass production. Normally, if you mix them, your field would produce a lot more biomass, and also increase biodiversity. Each crop would enhance the certain kind of microbes community, and also increase the biological nitrogen fixation. And normally, if you grow a legume crop with another companion crop, non-legume, and that would help legume crop to fix more nitrogen And in the meantime, to reduce the risk of crop failure, if you put a few uh, species together, particularly, if use a couple of species of legume instead of one, if one's a fail, and you have others to take the space and fix nitrogen for that particular season. And there are people also talking about shorter season cover crops. Mostly it was grown by conventional guys. They actually grow single species and they just seed it after harvest your crop and let it grow during rest of the fall season. And winter killed, and next year you could, or if it's winter killed, then you could grow your cash crop into it. Or if it's not killed, then those guys normally would spray and kill them. That's what they do. And there's other kind of cover crop called late season cover crops, and basically it's uh, many are what I say, both organic and conventional producers use these cover crops. They seed it late, but the purpose is to let this cover crop to take up all the excessive nitrogen in the soil, and then not to subject to prevent it being eroded or lost. So what they do is grow something like grow tillage radish. They would be able to grow quickly and absorb the excess amount of nitrogen that are available to the crops and keep it in the plant body, like the turnips or radish tissues. And during winter time, it will be killed by the frost, and spring it start decay quickly and release those nitrogen for the next crop. And in our area, the last two cover crops are not very often because our weather is so cold. And for organic producers, the late season cover crop is normally not used because we don't have excess amount of nitrogen in the soil. And particularly our nitrogen are in the form of organic compounds. So they are not really easy to be released, not easy lost. And now we come back to termination of cover crop. Why we terminate the cover crops? Well, the first reason is to serve the purpose of growing cover crops. What we want to do is to bring the benefits of this short season or short grown crop for a couple of months and then plow down, and that would serve, prevent soil erosion and produce nitrogen for our next crop. And the second reason is to prevent cover crop to produce seeds. This picture on the right side is the results of the cover crop was not terminated properly. So some of the species produce seeds. They germinate the next year and become weeds for the following crop. So in most cases, it's not the species you want to survive, and always those species you don't want them, they would show up in your crop field next year. So when to terminate? The termination should occur at the time when the plant are most vulnerable to physical damage. That time is the transitional stage from vegetative growth to reproductive growth. So termination during this time is more effective. During the vegetative growth stage, because the crops focus their energy to grow to go, what's that called? Uh, a vegetative growth. So if they put so much energy over there, attention over there, so it's really hard to kill. And when they starting to the productive growth stage, and they don't put a whole lot of energy to focus on the growth, so they start to shift their energy into flowering, producing seeds, and this time they are a lot more vulnerable. And when to terminate the criteria, including for the grass cereals, when they start elongate, the plant start shooting they start shooting up. That time is very vulnerable to the soft dough stage. And here I give the photo on the left side. You know that this is a soft dough stage when you pink the seeds. You could see this. That's exactly over here. And after that stage, you see the seeds start to change color and become fitting really well. And those are viable seeds start forming. So before this stage, and it's easy to kill. For the pulses crop, early flowering stage is good. We always say 10% of the flowering at beginning time. So not in the middle of flowering, you see lots of flowers. And in general, 10 to 30% of flowering, of your first flowering, that is a good time to terminate. So it depends on what kind of crops you are growing. The decision making is different. For single species, you could, if it's a grass, and then you would use this kind of standard. If it's a legume, you could use early flowering stage. But what happens if you have two species mix? Let's say pea and wheat. Which one? Oh, how you would decide, because they may not, happen the weeds start elongate and peas start flowering. And if they are mixed a little bit, which one you should choose, which standard you should select. My thought would be like if you have wheat and pea in that case, uh, you know, you probably use wheat as a standard because when wheat elongate and pea already flowering, occasionally if a pea was early and you got a few more pea seeds setting slightly late and some viable pea seeds setting, then uh, the pea would germinate later of the time, and they continue to fix nitrogen. I mean, if there are viable seeds, and normally they don't. And because those big pea seeds fall onto the ground, will be consumed by, beetles or other kind of, um, you know, or beneficial insects or being consumed by birds stuff. And multiple species mix. This is a little bit more complicated, and then you should choose that thing that doesn't really produce a whole lot of issues for your next crop, and then use that as a standard. Oh, I did say that for the two species, why we don't use wheat, and wheat, it's not really a big issue, unless it's a complicated, and you would have to decide which seeds won't produce a huge uh, volunteer weeds issue for your next year. And multiple species mix would also follow that standards and see which seeds setting would create problems and use that one as the standard. And now let's see how to terminate. And the first termination, also the most common one, is tillage termination. Use a plow or use discs. Plow down is the most common method to terminate cover crop on organic farms. And this kind of termination methods would allow the plant tissue incorporating into the soil, and the soil microbes can start break down the plant material quickly and release nitrogen for the next crop. And the next crop, I said 4 weeks. Normally, 4 weeks later, you would seed that next crop. Don't seed it too early. A downside is that this method is soil disturbance, and it leaves the soil vulnerable to erosion, particularly if you have a very windy days, and when soil dried, it start blowing soil away, or that could be the consequences. And another method is a disc. Use that till termination would be is a till termination is more often accomplished with discs, which is less destructive to the soil structure, and because it only disturb that much compared to the plow, it basically turn over the soil. So it's less destructive to soil structure, and it can also leave some crop residue on soil surface to reduce the erosion. And if you do have erosion things, and you could use this method and leave 20 to 30% of plant residues on the soil surface to protect soil from erosion. And it depends on how intensive you use this. You could control the percentage of the plant residue on the soil surface. And the next termination method is moving, and it can be used as no-till termination, and it can also be used with tillage. In this method, the plant tissues are chopped into smaller pieces, which help faster decomposition compared to the whole plants. And commonly used before plowing down on those high plants and with a big mass production cover crops to ease the process of incorporating into soil. Because if the plant is too high and use a plow down, it's really hard to drag this through. And when you do this moving first, it will be a lot easier. But remember to plow as soon as you can after the moving process, moving practice, to prevent nitrogen loss. Because after you chop this kind of plant tissues, they start decaying. Some of the nitrogen was exposed to the air, they would have lost. So if you could plow down them and bury them under the soil, and then those nitrogen will be reserved. If not used with plow down, it allows plant residues stay on the soil surface, providing ground cover and suppress weeds, reduce water loss, and trap snow in the winter time, and limit soil erosion in the next spring too. So some people would direct seed into that. If your soil is not subject to erosion, you could also use this method to do your direct seeding. Timely moving to prevent weed seed setting is important for weed control. And sometimes you could allow it to grow second round. That would increase the biomass production and fix more nitrogen. And control grazing is also a method that could be non-till termination if you use it alone, or can be used with the tillage. So the first thing you need to have ruminant animals, either you add it to your farm or get your neighbor livestock producers help. And this method, if you decide to have your own livestock, which actually provide opportunity, for diversifying your income from your diversifying income of your farming. You could have meat and milk to sell, which would be another source of a financial income. And these methods allow for minimum soil disturbance. Many weeds will be grazed along with the cover crop. So this is a weed control methods as well. So some of weeds, the animals choose to different, goats would really grazing the Canada thistle to almost the ground level, and a cattle is doing less than that, those animals would be able to drop their poops on the ground, and which actually change the nutrient dynamic as the cover crop tissue go through those animal bodies. They break down much quicker and faster than the decomposition by soil microbes. And once those plant tissue go through the animal body, and they actually diversifying the microbes, which really are beneficial to the soils. Even with this animal grazing, like most of nitrogen, about 80% of nitrogen would be deposited into this field. As they grow, they drop most of those animal manure onto the soil surface. They only consume, they take up about 80% to build the animal, bodies. Manure deposit and really help to improve the soil microbial diversity. Oh, if you do plant your cover crop, think about to seed those attractive nutritional and palatable plant species in the cover crop, and avoid any potential toxic plants. This actually would allow for multiple times grazing, so plant could regrow. So this is really, really good methods, because it's not only terminate the crop, but also could promote the crop growth in this, in the same area. They could produce multiple times and produce a lot more biomass and fix a lot more nitrogen if the legumes is inside there. And the next termination is no-till termination, roller crimper. This terminates the cover crops with a big weight drum with lengthwise blades that crush the vascular systems of the plant. So they chop the plant, break, but they don't completely break them into, different pieces. If that is the case in your crop, when you terminate your crop, if it chop into pieces, you probably need to think about reduce the length, reduce the weight of this drum. And many of those drums, they actually fill water, so to increase the power to crush the crops, and then chop them into still connected, but they were chopped, they were braked, They were broken, but they are still attached each other. That's a good standard. The best time is when cover crop are flowering, and if it's legume or if it's even the uh, cereal crops, wheat or its flowering stage is also a good time to do the chopping, to do the roller crimping. Roller, a younger plant stand will result in incomplete termination that would start growing back if you terminate too early with this method. If you plant the seed directly into this field in following year, I mean direct seeding, then you would think you should make sure that you have sufficient biomass to prevent weed suppression. Normally, greater than 5,300 pounds per acre. And for multiple species cover crop, this target is not very high to achieve. It's pretty easy to get, over 8,000 or even more uh, pounds per acre biomass. And roll the cover crops in the same direction as you will plant in the next year, because that would help your seeder to cut through this plant, the residual mat, and require a planter that cut through the residual mulch. A disc drill seeder will do that, and most of the producers have this seeder. And seed sow the seeds when the mulch is dry. If it's too wet, they may affect the seed germination or for the younger plant to catch disease. Another non-till termination is a winter kill. This is the easiest method without any need of management time or equipment. You sit it over there, the frost would kill the plants. In most cool season annuals, such as lentils, peas, faba beans, chickpea, chickling wheat, and the tillage radish, will not survive over winter in prairie conditions. So all those plants, so all those crops can be used for that purpose. Winter killed crop residue protects soil from erosion and help retain soil moisture and suppress weeds in spring. To plant winter kill cover crops, try to seed late, because you have to find that kind of time window that would reach the termination stage, because that would be maximum benefits. And not, in the meantime, not set any seeds to before the first frost. Otherwise, if they produce some viable seeds, they would cause the weeds issue in next spring. And if you seed it too late, and it didn't really produce a whole lot of biomass, and that would reduce your benefit of this cover crop. So try to figure it out. It got maximum growth and also not create weeds issues for your next crop. Now I want to summarize the methods comparison, and we talk about strengths and weakness of termination methods. This table I modified it from the Podolsky 2013 summary. For plowing and easiness is 3 stars, and erosion protection was poor, it got only 1 star. Weed control is great, and because you could continue after you terminate, you could continue plow and get weed control. Nitrogen availability, it's very good, and retain all the nitrogen, or almost all the nitrogen and energy saving is hard. It's not that great. And winter kill is the easiness is most easy methods. Yeah, when we're talking about erosion protection, winter kill depends on how the crop are growing. It could be 2-star or 3 stars. We control it if sometimes it's not that great. And the nitrogen availability, 3 stars we give. And because it was laid on the surface, the decomposition lost some nitrogen in the crop itself. And energy saving is great because we don't use any machine to do it. Moving, got yeah, very easy and good, provide good protection as well. And we control its 2 to 3 stars and nitrogen availability 3 stars. Because if you don't terminate it, if you don't plow down, and some of the nitrogen would lost, and the energy saving 2 to 3 stars. Rolling prepper, easy, we give 3 stars. Erosion protection got the full mark. It's excellent because the crop are basically lay on the surface to prevent uh, any erosion to occur. Nutrients, weed control is pretty good as well. And if we got enough biomass and the nitrogen availability is we lose some nitrogen. Energy saving is 2 to 3 stars. And control grazing, it's most difficult to do. Erosion protection 2 to 3 stars. Weed control is pretty good and got slightly below the plowing. And nitrogen availability, we give 5 stars because it really help, increase soil biodiversity, nitrogen supplies, and also sometimes and help to build the soil phosphorus supplies as well. So energy saving is we give 2 stars. And the last slide, I list some potential pitfalls and not being able, the first one is not being able to terminate in time. And because you get busy that time, and then, you start, oh, this cover crop, they are low priority. I need to work on other things, which is more important at that time. And then, some of those cover crops become, have a seed setting and then create lots of troubles for you next year. The second one is seeding the following cash crop too close. And some people, do that, terminate the cover crop, and very next week, they seeded the new crop. So in our climatic condition, we require 4 weeks minimum for the plant residue, plant biomass to decompose. Let me try again. It requires 4 weeks for plant tissues to decompose and start releasing nutrients for the next crop to use. So in some warmer areas in South United States, they use 3 weeks, but over here, because the temperature is pretty low, and sometimes the moisture supply is not that great. So you need to give a minimum of 4 weeks to seed next crop after the cover crop is terminated. And the third one is nitrogen tied up by the high carbon to nitrogen ratio biomass. When legume crops is not enough, particularly, when some organic producers also grow cereals as a cover crop, single species as a cover crop, which is not really defer some of the purposes of the cover crops. In organic, we are rely on the cover crops to provide nitrogen supply. So you need to put enough legumes, seeds to produce over 50% of a biomass in those cover crops to produce the nitrogen benefit, maximum nitrogen benefit. So that's something. If you have a very high nitrogen to very high carbon to nitrogen ratio crop biomass, and the suffer is not only just the following crop, it will be the crop after this, all the crops following the cover crops. So that should be, we should pay attention to that. And the next one is the delayed germination by cold soil from cover crop mulch in the spring. So if you have a cover crop mulch in the spring, you seed some crops and which need a longer growing season to mature, and you need to be careful because it would delay the germination, could be by 3 days to a week. And the other one is too late seeding, causing seeds not germinating, and your field become weedy. That is easily understandable. Some of those seeds, if they don't, access soil moisture, and particularly if you seed late, the soil could be dry, and then those seeds will sit there, and until, if you start growing another crop, for example, if you grow fall rye or winter wheat, and those cover crop seeds didn't germinate early, and they would come up a later time as become a weed for your next crop. That's what my presentation about today. Hello.